Call the meeting of July 8th, 2024 of the Goffstown Select Board. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up, of course, is the acceptance and correction of minutes from 6/24/24, public and non-public.
I make a motion, we accept the 6/24/24 public and non-public minutes with corrections if need be.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. I have no announcements. Does anybody have anything to bring forward? Seeing none. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none. Well, we're going to roll right into an appointment we have with Noelle Prince, Girl Scout Troop 20077. And Noelle, why don't you tell us what you're all about?
Hello everyone, so thank you board for allowing me to present this evening.
No, I don't want to interrupt you, but you can have a seat.
Sit down, yeah, and just that way they can get it on the mic.
Get comfortable and just a little bit closer to the microphone.
There you go.
Thank you.
So my name is Noelle Prince. I'm a local Girl Scout from Troop 20077, and I've been working on my silver award, which is called Heedful Horses. My award is to get appropriate road signs placed near local equine facilities to alert motorists to be alert for horses in the roadway. W117 equestrian warning signs would look like this. And as an equestrian rider myself and a member of a local 4-H horse chapter, I decided to take on this project because it was important to me. I myself have been riding with when a nearby motorist with a loud car passed by closely, scaring my horse and almost causing an injury. I noticed after my lesson that there were no proper road signs nearby. Also, shortly after this incident happened, another New Hampshire woman from Enfield was injured and her horse had to be euthanized because a motorist. My goal is to set up the appropriate signs in my nearby towns, and I have been also working with other towns and even the State Department to get approval. I do not require funding. I have fundraised already $500 to put towards the purchase of these signs, which will cover these being requested here today. I have been in contact with Robert Hislop from the New Hampshire DOT. I also plan to make an equine/road safety video to present to local driving education centers that they could share with new drivers about sharing the road. New Hampshire has a lot of great equine centers and a strong horse community, and my hope is that by you approving these signs here today, I will be able to get the word out to other local horse owners and communities to make sure that we are staying safe in our communities. Thank you for your time today.
Don't run away yet. We'll get some questions. Okay. First, anybody got any questions off the top of your head?
Yes, I have a couple questions.
Kelly's got some questions.
First off, Noelle, thank you for coming as not a lifelong, but a Girl Scout for many years of my life. I really appreciate you making your project so near and dear to your heart, but also for the local community. So good for you for being here, and thank you for taking this on. I noticed that you had marked the area which you were looking to put the signs. Now, are you requesting just one sign?
I'm requesting that many signs can be on roads that are near equestrian centers.
And do you happen to know where those places are?
Yes, so I'm in reach with a couple of equestrian centers already, and I go to Mountainside Stables, so they've already told me that I can put the signs there too.
So how many signs are you anticipating for Goffstown?
For Goffstown, maybe around 20 signs, depending on how many equine centers there are.
Mom maybe had a different thought behind it. Maybe you could check in with her.
There would be 4 signs.
Okay, great. And do you happen to know, I think we have a list on the attachment of where they are.
So I had put in a map where the Worthley Hill, the Mountainside Stables is located at, and where Upreach Therapeutic on Page Hill Road is located.
So it's just those 2 as of right now that we're thinking?
Yeah.
Isn't there another one up at Page Hill someplace? No.
That's Upreach.
Oh, no, I thought up the other side, close to 13.
I
Maybe not.
I think we have some signage around Yanakopoulos'.
Years ago, right?
We've got some down there already.
So you're talking about Jelinas's, Joe Jelinas's place, right?
Yep.
So my other questions are for Chief primarily, and then Adam as well. Yeah, go ahead, if that's okay. Pete. Come on up. Have you guys met Noel already?
Haven't. Nice to
Okay.
meet you. Welcome. Eric Strino, Chief Police. Nice to meet you. And hi, Noel. How's it going?
So Noel, Eric is the Chief of Police, manages a lot of the rules and regulations regarding road signs and how they fit into our community, primarily through the Highway Safety Committee. So Eric, I'm assuming that you can guess the questions that I'm going to ask you. Okay, go for it.
So we didn't want to push this out to another highway safety meeting because it is riding season. So we decided that between Adam and I talked about it initially that we thought it'd be a good idea for her to come right to you guys to have that approval. Based on just our quick conversation, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, we did talk about initially there are some signage in the community already that are within the parameters of the federal guidelines. And I don't think we found any reason why she shouldn't put them up in those areas, as long as there's not already signs there. I know specifically up on Worthy Hill, Fersen Road area, there are private horse stables that people ride on the road up there that would be beneficial because we see them out on Shirley Hill, Back Mountain, Fersen, Worthy, and then of course Upreach is a huge spot up there in that area.
Great, and if I could just ask one more for Adam. Adam, so with Noel raising the funds to purchase these signs, what would be the relationship between her project and DPW for getting those installed? Is that something we can assist with?
I think it depends. We could certainly assist. It would depend on how big the scope of your project. You know, if you wanted to include installation of, we can coach you through how that works. You can just call DigSafe to get a permit to penetrate the ground. But if you'd like to donate and the board wants to accept that donation and install them, certainly DPW could do it. So really,
So,
there's as little as you want to do.
so is it your suggestion that they make a donation and you purchase the signs? Is that what your plan is?
That would work, at least from the standard of the signs itself, if they would be consistent with the street signs that we normally would purchase, if that works. If you want, we could put you in touch with our supplier as well, so do that either way. I don't know how much or how little you have to do for the badge.
I think it's around 50 or 30 hours required, so I think maybe I would put up at most 10 signs, so it's kind of more of a small project.
Okay.
Cost?
Adam, I don't know much about the sign ordinances, but it would be possible to co-locate these signs on an existing sign post with some other sign, or just trying to avoid signs everywhere in town?
We could if there are warning signs in the area already. I'm trying to think about Page Hill. I'm pretty sure on Wordley there are not signs existing other than the street name sign, and because of the stop sign, is there a stop sign? There's not. So we could there. I think the question would be for Wordley and Fersen anyway, how, if you did want signs there, would you want it just by the Mountainside Stables, or would you want it maybe out at Shirley Hill, at Fersen?
At Fersen and then the other side, yeah.
And we kind of catch those people that use Fersen as well.
Just a thought to consider.
If they do, because it's a warning sign, you can co-locate two warning signs together, and if it would work, it probably wouldn't, but if it would work, the street name sign post could be used as well. You just can't put it with a regulatory sign.
So would you envision having one at each end of Worthy, maybe one at each end of Fearston? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Certainly could, or we could do three, and kind of triangulate, one on Worthley, one at the end of Fersen, and then one at Tipping Rock. And then you'd have that whole
Right.
3 streets, that whole neighborhood.
Jim?
Just curious, I don't know anything about horses. Is it legal to have a horse on the side of the road?
It is.
It is, okay.
Actually, Eric, do you want to explain it? what the laws are on horses?
Well, I don't have the exact laws in my head, but I know they can walk on there. Obviously, the big issue is always cleaning up the mess after, but we've had a situation in town where we've had cars raced by horses at a high rate of speed, scaring the horse, scaring the rider. Actually, it was on Back Mountain Road. So, yeah.
I'd be interested to know if there's been change since when I used to be in 4-H and ran the horse club here in town, that horses actually had the right of way. And I think that's probably still a law today. In fact, I think maybe some knowledge needs to be put out there, even to the police and fire, that they're supposed to shut their sirens off if they see
Yeah,
a
I know we
horse.
shut.
Huh?
We shut, when I was on the fire department, we had horses. We always shut sirens off, no air horns, no nothing, you know. You know,
And I'm
it's-
sure Noel will put that in her video.
Yep, in the video.
I think the chief's looking up our
I
information
am.
now.
I'm talking about it.
I'm glad you didn't know either.
Yeah.
But of course, that was a few years ago when I was doing it. When I was in
How many years ago, Pete?
Yeah, really, it says that it's, the RSA is talking about approaching horses, that they shall have control of the vehicle and approaching the horse, drive in a safe manner, control the vehicle, that has to exercise every reasonable precaution to prevent frightening such horse and ensure the safety and protection of the person riding the horse. That's the RSA. That was enacted in 1982.
When?
1982 was when that was passed.
That was way after me. Anybody else got any questions? Any issues? Adam, you have any issues?
I don't have any issues. I think, my recommendation would be maybe 5 signs, 3 like we talked about at the Wordley, First and Tipping Rock areas, and then 2 for Page Hill, 1 on either side of Upreach. I think that would make sense.
Yeah, as long as no one's.
That'd be a good start anyway, right? Eric, you all set?
Yep, yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, do we need a
Thanks for
motion?
coming in, Noel. Seems like a very worthwhile project. Thank you.
See,
Yes, so if you could approve the installation of the signs in the right of way, I
We
guess.
still have to accept the donation though.
Well, I will need an actual amount to accept the
Okay.
donation, so as we get closer to the installation amount, we'll put that on the agenda, because I have to put the dollar amount on the agenda.
Right.
But yeah, if I could get a motion for
Kelly
you
made-
to,
Sure, I'll make the motion that Noel can start working on the exact signage and partner with the DPW director, or he'll give recommendations on locations, and then Noel will come back and we can accept the donation.
Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jim. Any further discussions or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Chief, you can stay up.
And we have next up is Police Chief with the Highway Safety Committee recommendations. And we're going to start first with Church Street, and we're on section 7.
Okay, thank you. So this is, Church Street is dated back in March. As you guys remember, we chose at one point to take the speed limit reductions or recommendations to the June, or the right after June quarterly meeting. So this comes from March. The individual on Church Street came in, kind of wanted to request some slow children playing in the street, painted on the street. His concern is that in the early morning hours where the kids are at the bus stop on Church Street, there's traffic bypassing North Mass's congestion, so they're flying down Church Street. So he asked us to do that. We did a study on it, and there is a typo on your memorandum here. It's 3 bus stops, not 4. But there are 3 bus stops on Church Street, all different age groups of children. We also looked at it becoming the new bike path that connects the rail trails. And then obviously there's just a lot of traffic in that area in the morning. The officer that looked into it didn't think the speed was necessarily an issue, and we have the speed calculations in there. It's not a huge amount of speed over 30, but you are seeing some cars that are doing 40 to 45, 45 to 50, we had one car doing 50. But needless to say, the Highway Safety Committee looked at all the parameters and all the, had conversations about it, read the report, and they all recommended to reduce Church Street to a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on a 5-0 vote. And that's based on the high volume of children, the 3 bus stops, and the bike path connecting the rail trail to the New Boston Rail Trail.
Is it posted at this time?
Believe it, I'd have to look. I think the top end is definitely, I don't think the bottom end over here is a 30 out.
But you would post it?
We will, yes. And the hope through highway safety was, if this does get approved by you guys, we go to town vote, or the 2 public meetings, is that we can get it in place way before school starts and then kind of sit out there.
Okay. Anybody got any questions?
You say it's 35 now?
It's 30. Do you want to talk about the other part of that?
So my only other question, if you look on page 6 of your packet, right at tab 7, I did have a, does the board want to consider any of the adjacent connecting roads? You have Clinton Street and White Street that connect into North Mass. You have Kendall Hadley and Depot Street that connect into Church. So did you want to limit, because this would be an ordinance, would require 2 public hearings and then a vote at a 3rd meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted to consider all those streets in this little neighborhood network, or if you just wanted to limit it to Church Street.
And if I may, we did not consider that, but Derek brought up a good point that Depot and Kendall Hadley is part of that bike path. So, although there's not a lot of residential traffic on those 2 roads, it does help us out. And also we use it for the detour for Punta Regatta. If we do close Main Street again, that will be part of the detour, which hopefully keep it down.
So would it be necessary to do the small streets to sign those? I mean, you'd be pretty difficult to get at the very high speed on Clinton or,
Yeah, I mean, it just depends, on how you guys want to go about it. I think that the bigger picture here is to look at slowing that traffic down in that area. I mean, they're coming into a 25 anyways when they hit North Mass in summer, so it might be good to kind of look at all of it, which might open us up to the other side of North Mass at some point,
Well, it's just like Collis said, then we end up with signs all over town. I don't know if those little short streets you can get up to that fast. Then you turn onto them, you're going 25. You have to be over.
Yeah. If anything, it just alerts motorists that the speed is 35 or 25, not 30 or 35.
I can understand Depot makes sense. That's just.
Yeah, the other 2.
Huh?
They're not long enough to get.
Plus, if we've reduced it on Church, they're going to be slowing down anyways and slowing even further down, not to turn onto those minor connector streets, it would seem to me.
Well, I guess it wouldn't hurt if the ordinance is there. Is it necessary to sign the streets if there's an ordinance?
I'd have to look at that. I think that, like anything else, there's, alerting the motorists is always the key, right? But not every street is signed either when it comes to, speed limits or any other ordinances out there. So I would recommend, if we were going to do that, we would sign it, because it just shows people that that's the speed limit. We did it on North Mast, even like the Peppermint area, the Spice Rack. I mean, that's just a residential area, but we posted that. I think we should do it. If we're going to do all of them.
So that means each one of those streets would have to have 2 signs.
Yep. In theory, if you guys approved that and the votes went through, we enacted that ordinance, I would do that, yep. And again, we're talking, the Highway Safety Committee recommended Church Street. The thought was, do we want to encapsulate the whole area?
I would be in favor of doing the whole area, only because the bike paths there, people cutting across from Church Street to Mass Road in that general area. I mean, that's my feelings. Do it all.
If we amend the recommendation for public hearing? We could change it at that point, right?
You could change it on your vote. We could notice it that you were considering an ordinance to reduce the speed limit on all of those roads, and then you could ultimately reduce it after the public hearing. I would say that would be the safest way to do it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem, I mean, I don't have a problem with doing it, I just, you know, there seems to be a lot of speed limit signs that, you know, that should be putting up.
The line in the song rings in my head, signs, signs, everywhere signs.
Yeah.
Do we have those signs, Adam, or would they have to be purchased? I know we have a supply of signs, but
We do have a stock of some 25s. I don't think we'd have enough for all, all of that all in one shot, so we'd have to order them for sure. The other thing maybe to talk about would be if the side streets aren't, if the ordinance doesn't change for them, would we need a sign on Church at each of those streets anyway? Because now if you're taking North Mast, you go through a non-25 on White Street because it's not posted. Now you turn onto Church Street. If you're turning in the middle, you don't know it's a 25.
Yeah.
So
But isn't that the same situation, no matter if those streets are signed or not, you're still coming in
We-
to the middle of it, and
There are some streets in this town don't have that come off into an intersecting street, but yeah, it's definitely thought. We've done that like in Blackbrook Road, we hit those major intersections, but like I think if some come off Cinnamon, I'm not sure if that one has it right there, but that is a good point.
the other, and maybe the time to do it would be now before the hearings are scheduled, but another thing to think about might be stop signs, even though they're not really supposed to be speed control. Like you said, it takes, by the time you get up to speed on Clinton and or White, if there's a stop sign ahead of you at Church, you've got to be slowing down anyway. So that might be another thing to think about rather than speed for those.
So with the timing of that, though, if there wouldn't be before school time to go back to highway safety for that portion?
It would. It just, the problem is anytime based on what we've done now with the way we're doing business here with the board, is anytime we're gonna reduce a speed limit, we're gonna wait until the following June or July, after that June meeting, to then bring it to the board's attention. So in theory, we would have time, it wouldn't be enacted until the next year.
I think my only question is the smaller streets, the two small streets. And maybe Ken will have it too, I don't, you really can't. And so when you get to Depot or you get to Church, no matter which way you're going, how do you know it's 25? That's the question that Adam just,
Right. And you don't know whether you put signs out. This is the only way. All I'm saying to, not to like put Adam on the spot, but counter his conversations, we do have roads in this community where when you come off the side street, you're on that road, you don't see this is a 25, 30, or 35.
how would you prosecute that?
The speed limit's the speed limit. As my predecessor years ago said, ignorance to the law is no excuse.
Every man is presumed to know the law.
All
That
right.
would be a question I guess we'd have to have in the court of law.
Yeah.
So I'll make that motion that we move the recommendation to a public hearing with adding that onto the notice that we're considering the other streets.
Okay?
So that was a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
That one was that one. I believe the next one, Mr. Chair, on yours is the street light on Plummer Street.
Yes, you're at tab 7B.
So this one came to us from a resident who lives at the end of Plummer Street in Pinardville, which is a dead end. He requested a street light at the end of his street at the cul-de-sac. Some of his thoughts were, it is a dead end, there are cars going down the end of that road that aren't really familiar with the area. getting into that dead end and would like to have it a little bit more illuminated for when cars are coming down, they see it's a dead end and have the ability to turn around properly. We did a modified traffic study, more or less just went to the neighborhood and kind of see what the temperature was in the neighborhood, and all of them agreed that they wanted it. So based on that and based on the highway safety researching how the town puts streetlights in is, there's really no rhyme or reason at this point. We decided 5-0 to add the streetlight at the end of Plummer Street. So again, we put in the memo that Adam has advised of streetlights already in the area. We went back and looked at them for the map he had, and there's just streetlights everywhere in Bernardville. So, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I just have a question. I was just gonna say, for cost purposes, did you guys consider a dead end sign, or, like no through street, or whatever sign is most appropriate instead of the street?
I think there is a dead end sign at the pole that's where the firehouse is.
I was gonna say, there's a few
it's already
there that have the dead end signs. I think the resident really was more concerned with people coming up, turning around, and not having that.
What's the cost?
$99 for the head, for the street light, and then at this point, it appears that Eversource puts them up for us as long as we provide the street light itself, the LED street light.
So the pole and installation, no charge, we pay for the fixture.
There's a pole up there already, I think they were looking at.
There's a piece, yep, so we deliver the Cobra head to them, so we've already purchased that, we have some in stock from the streetlight conversion years ago.
Right.
We still have some left, so we provide the head to them, and then for $99, that's the cost of their work order for a streetlight repair, so.
What's the annual cost?
It's not terribly much now that they're LED, but I'd have to get back to you.
Just
on that
curious.
for itemized.
I don't think it makes much of a difference.
So then, my next question is, all those other dead end streets around there, do they all have streetlights?
Well, so that's kind of what we've talked about once this came up is there is no, and again, I guess we've said this, there is no rhyme or reason of how this is done. You can see on the map that whole necessarily Plummer Street, but if you go up on like College Road, Pine Hill might have 3 between College and Eden Street, but the rest of it has nothing, but then the next street up, Holly, has none. So there's really no rhyme or reason of how Bernardville got, Pine Hill got 3 streetlights there. So the question is, or the answer is no, we don't know that every cul-de-sac has one. But the one,
There's a
I just
few
want to
that-
make sure
there's
there's
a
some
few that don't.
baseline for deciding it, because then if there's an influx of requests that we're
And
just like, well, there's no rhyme or reason.
that's where he and I were talking that at the Highway Safety Committee, we were gonna try to discuss how do we handle this, or is it something that we have to talk to the board about how you want to handle it as well?
So is there any documented safety issue here, or?
Not in Plummer Street.
Yeah, okay.
Not on Palmer Street. Because there are some streets in that area that are 4-ways, right? That you come up Pine Hill or, Laurier that comes to an intersection, which that might be more beneficial than just a random, between 2 streets, you have 3 streetlights.
So,
But I can understand the resident up there, somebody's coming up and made the wrong turn at midnight and he's floundering around trying to find his way out because he can't see anything. I understand, and I think but I also think that if this is an issue, then maybe we need to take a look at the whole picture and come up with a plan and say, okay, we need to do this. I'm just saying, we just start, I don't like to say, okay, let's wait till somebody complains before we fix it. I don't know if that's the proper way to handle it either.
Well, to your point, I think we just received one the other day for another side street in that area for a traffic light, or I'm sorry, street light.
Street light.
Yeah, so, we talked about that when this popped up and we looked at the map, and we kind of said.
Pandora's box, right?
This is
Yeah.
right.
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm really concerned, once this starts, we're gonna get more and more requests. I'm a big supporter of the Dark Sky Initiative. We talk about it in planning, and we make developers shield lights so that we don't blast open the light into the night sky. So I'm not real supportive of installing street lights every time somebody asks for one.
Well, I
Unless there's
guess-
an overriding safety concern, of course, that's different.
I was gonna say, to your point, Carlos, is there a safety issue? Is there
Some, so in Pinardville specifically, not the whole town. In Pinardville, the majority of the dead-end streets do have a street light, both at the intersection with Mass Road and at the end, whatever the end is, usually cul-de-sac, sometimes a hammerhead. The safety-related issue, in addition to, I think, the loitering concern, was part of it, I'm sure, but the safety concern with some of those streets on the hillside of Mass Road is, as you travel up, there are houses behind. In some of the neighborhoods, the roads bend around the back of some of these dead ends. I don't know if Plummer Street is one in particular, but a few of them, as you're driving up, you can see a house off in the distance that's not on that
Oh,
street.
my condos are right, where I live, is right behind there.
And somebody
It's
may-
got two streets.
Somebody may think they could continue on and take this driveway, it's a road, open, now you're in somebody's private driveway. So if the board really wanted to dial into that, we could certainly do a night check to see if that's the
So
case
Adam, with a
here.
lot of developers, we require them to install downcast lighting. Is it possible to do that, or is there a light downcast, I don't know, visor or whatever you can put on these lights so that you limit the amount of
I
light
have
that
to
washes out?
look at our spec for these. I don't remember what the cutout, I think, is the specification. So I could take a look. If we could add a shroud, that's certainly something that we could do going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate.
But I think we had originally tried to do a lower cutoff lights when we had converted them, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was already pretty good.
And that was one of the concerned cause of this particular situation, where it was one resident requesting that area. So that's why they went out and just kind of touched base with kind of all the neighbors up there and kind of see what their thought process was. Because, one of the considerations, although it might not be necessarily a traffic-related accidents, we've had a numerous amount of accidents due to darkness, but also, quality of life, right? So if the majority of the residents were, to say, no, we don't want this is too much for us, highway safety would have to take that into consideration. But seeing that they all are ecstatic about doing it, it kind of made sense for us, but.
Once you install it and start people figure out they don't want it, what happens then?
Good question.
No, I'm just saying.
Who's going to take them down, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll make the motion to push it forward to public hearing.
This one does not require a
Yeah,
public
It's not
hearing.
a change.
Oh,
I think.
okay. All right, well then, never mind, because I don't want to do that, if we don't need a public hearing. But we have to approve this, right?
Mark, you talked with Felix.
Yeah, I did. I mean, he's just, the kids and the people in their cars, they drive up there at night. Sometimes they sit in a circle. They drive up, spin their tires, come back. The old lady in the White House,
Elderly lady.
the elderly lady, yeah, sorry, correct my English. She's concerned, she's very happy there's gonna be a light there now. I think she leaves her outside light on all night, it's just more for safety than anything else. And I'll make the motion that we install a street light. Anybody wants to second it, go right ahead.
I'll second that.
So I have
Go ahead.
some comments. I would like to, I kind of want to hold off on this for a little bit, because I would like to look at two different things. Based on the study that you guys did, and they're talking to the residents, I think that's great. But I also want to make sure that in the purview of highway safety, that is being done appropriately. Like, what would happen if anyone requested? Would that be the process, or is that a DPW thing? Or who's like the, or is it just up to you guys to bring it to us? Like, it sounds like we don't have much history on what the process is, and I think we need to clarify that so that across the board it's fair. moving forward if we're already getting other requests?
So
And
in
then,
the-
go ahead, sorry.
Not to cut you off.
Yep, go ahead.
So in the past, they have all gone to highway safety, so I think independently of who receives a request, as long as it's on a town road, we send it to highway safety to be looked at. A couple of years ago, it was some of the neighborhoods off Tibbetts.
Catamount was looking for one at one time. We
Yes.
shot that one down though, didn't we?
Yep.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Back
I'm sorry,
Road.
Yeah.
So similar concerns to dead ends and cul-de-sacs was okay, this is an intersecting street on a main road, and how many of those need tap lights, and does it matter where in town? And yes, the board decided against that one, more for the dark sky concerns, I think.
So that was the second part. I want to look at if it's possible, Adam, to see where the lights are now on those dead-end streets specifically in Pinardville. Because to Eric's point of what he was talking about, like they went out and they asked all the residents, do you want this, yes or no? Is that going to be the standard for asking each street if they want one? Or do we just wait until they come? Like, these are questions I'm posing to the board. Do we wait till someone brings it to us? And then at that rate, the cost for $99 a lamp post, how many of those do we have? Is it more efficient to buy something different for the light pollution? I don't know. I feel like this is a bit, I understand and I see that the committee voted for it. However, like, would you say that there's a safety concern? Or they were just agreeing that it was a good idea?
Based on traffic-related history, right, like we don't have any data to support there's accidents up in that area. If the residents are concerned with cars flying up there and, maybe pulling into someone's driveway or not realizing it's dead end with a house there, I would say that could be a safety issue, sure.
But that's not gonna stop that from happening. They're just gonna be able to see where they're going
Sure.
when they get to the top of the hill.
And I think that's where we go back to the rhyme and reason of how we implement these,
Right.
right? And again, the history of where all these streetlights are, how is it, and we've talked about this, how is it that one street has 7 and the next street above it has none? So we are looking at how do we approach that? And again, I think you're right. I think if it's a safety issue for traffic-related stuff, highway safety does have purview. If it's merely just going to be more of a quality of life situation, then I don't know that should it be our purview for safety?
Some towns, they refer to the highway safety committee as the sign and light committee,
Yeah, sure.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's, the only reason I asked is I want to be respectful of the votes that took place, but I want to understand where that came from, just because to hold this off to get additional information to make it the same across the board for this and moving forward, I think I would like to do, but
Would it be advantageous for us to do a survey of what needs to be done and poles and lights there, and then notify all those people by mail, hey, we're gonna have a meeting and this is what we're talking about, and give anybody who's got an issue either way an opportunity?
I will tell you, and again, I don't mean to kind of go off the rails here, but one of my concerns, and I've spoken to Adam about this and the Highway Safety Committee themselves, is due to our limited staffing right now and our resources, like, I don't want to tie officers up on stuff that is not necessarily urgent. So that's why we're not necessarily diving into this stuff with such, teeth, because we don't have the resources to do it.
But by opening the door, you could be doing that the back doorway, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You could end up doing it anyway because of something we did shortcut this time, but it may turn into something much larger in the future, so. I understand, and I agree with that, that's dark up there and I can understand it. We've had people up there, we've had issues of, people up and down the street and things, so. I mean, that particular spot, I can say where the fire station's right up the street, right down the street. Anybody else? Calls, you all set?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoke my piece.
Okay. So the motion on the floor by Mark, it was seconded by Jim to approve the street light on Plummer, up at the end, and it seems like we have the ability to do it at a minimum expense at this. Would that be accurate, Adam?
Yes.
Yeah.
For this one, yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I'll vote yes. Opposed?
No,
2 noes, so it's 3-2. Motion passes. Next.
The last one here, make sure I have the right information here, is Lynchfield Park Road. This is a request for stop signs by a resident on Bay Street and Cove Street.
Hasn't this come up before?
So that was the question Adam and I were trying to research, because we personally took a ride down there to kind of see what was going on. This is one resident who has said that when they were driving down there in the morning, they've almost been hit several times, cars coming off of Bay and Cove.
And isn't that resident just like a seasonal resident? He's not there year-round? I'll say it. I'll say it.
Sounds like that, yes. We went down there and realized that every road in that neighborhood, except for one, all have yield signs, which led me to talk to Adam about potentially years ago, without digging too far in the history of highway safety minutes, that maybe they put yield signs when there was nothing there to have people yield to oncoming traffic. So we looked at that. We were there for, I don't know, half an hour and saw one car going 20 miles an hour and yielded coming out of the intersection. We did not put a huge investment in a traffic survey. We put the radar out there. We initially said, well, let's look to see if this even has the parameters in their federal law for what a stop sign requires at an intersection. And we determined based on the traffic counts it didn't even meet that requirement for the federal regulations. We haven't really had any major accidents there, or any speed was a factor during our survey. So the Highway Safety Committee voted 5-0 to take no action on this, to not do anything with it. Keep the yield signs where they are, and unless we have any other further complaints coming out of Jolly 7 in that area, then I don't think, we're not seeing any major
Isn't
issues.
this, we had a problem with the trash truck in there, or clean snow or something, somebody complained, not a few
There was
years
a
ago.
fence.
Huh?
There was a fence a few years ago.
It was something that was backed up on the guy's yard or something.
Busy neighborhood. We do have a turnaround.
We have a turnaround at the next street up.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we looked at this, kind of what we just said about Church Street. So if you do stop signs at Cove and Bay, you're gonna have to hit the bottom sides of them by the river, up top. You're gonna have to hit Hamlin, Chip, Ambrose, Chattel, like, at that point, you're gonna, Oak Street, you're gonna have to hit the whole neighborhood.
We looked at, as Chief mentioned, the METCD's got some guidelines about when to start thinking about yield signs,
Yeah.
when to start thinking about stop signs. I think we were off by at least a factor of 10 to even talk about a stop sign. Unless other engineering judgment comes into play, and the other thing that you look at when you're trying to decide that is sight distance. So if you have a low traffic, but there's terrible sight distance, maybe you think about it anyway. Sight distance is good at all those intersections.
Now, it seemed like it was pretty,
That's not good.
so I'll take a motion on this one.
yeah, I'll make the motion. I think the two comments speak for themselves. The vehicle count didn't meet the need for a stop sign. Speed and accidents are not a factor. I think they speak for themselves, so I'll take a motion that no action.
Second.
Any more questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
May I just ask clarification on the street lights? Do you want us to dig into this and come back at some point and give you guys some information regarding what?
Something in the future, I mean, we passed the one for now, right?
Because I think, we talked about this even with the reduction in speed limits. I think that once residents feel like this is something that can get passed like that, they start to come in, and I guess the question becomes on the board is, at what point are we saying yay or nay, or is there any kind of mechanism to definitely say yes or no? And right now, it's just up to the committee members to kind of look at it, and, so there's no, like Kelly was saying, just there's no real, what's fair, what's the threshold?
Yeah, there's no guidance. There's no guidance. But I think it is a topic for discussion, certainly with you folks, DPW. The planning board ought to be involved because, like I say, they are pushing the dark sky initiatives and requiring developers to come in. So I think they should be engaged. And so I think there needs to be some internal conversation about where, as a community, we're headed with this.
I think the biggest thing, regardless, I agree, Collis, but I think the biggest thing, regardless of if we look, and Adam, maybe we could do that anyway. So my request to Eric was to talk to Highway Safety to see, what and we can work with them in planning, and we need to figure out some sort of process for that. So I don't know if you can bring that up to them first, knowing they have more historical knowledge of this stuff, and maybe speak to the decision-making of the purview of Highway Safety, or potentially what other, you said signs and lights, so maybe maybe it is.
That's
and
where we
that's
are.
okay if it is. And then Adam, maybe if it's possible to check to see which of those dead-end roads don't have, because what if it's only 3? I have no idea.
It's pretty close to that. It's, a majority have them.
Okay,
Some of the trickier ones, as Eric mentioned, are the stretches of a straight street that might not have lights in between, but the next
Right.
street over is fully lit.
yeah. Because I
I
think
could
that.
bring a map, we
to
can
that
look at it
point.
on the wall if you like at a future meeting. And
I think that would be helpful to kind of know the scope of if we should be taking any action, or just letting it go case by case if we kind of have a grasp on what it actually.
I think
I mean, I could also drive around.
the key is how many we talking.
Exactly.
If you're talking just, and I don't know about getting the planning board involved, because that's kind of retro, once it's already been put through. Every time somebody puts a stop, a street light, it doesn't go to the planning board for approval first. So,
No, but I think we could certainly reach out to Joanne Duffy and ask her for some input relative to the planning process.
oh yeah, definitely, in future planning, I can see
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, so.
Well, those were my 2 asks, and then for us to move forward from there.
Okay.
But I don't know if anyone else.
The
has
good
any-
news, you have 3 out of the 5 on highway safety sitting in the room, and Joanne Duffy's the other one that's on the committee, so I think we're in good shape there.
All right, all right, next.
All right.
I think next is Adam, right?
Yep.
Are you guys agreeing that that's worth asking? It was just me asking, so is that
No, he's got it.
fair?
Adam, see if you can put it together.
yeah, it's easy enough.
It's 3 or 4, it's not a
I
big
think,
deal.
Adam, when we had our safety committee, that meeting, didn't you bring it up, and there was, I think, only 3 lights at the end of the streets that didn't have them.
I don't have my highway safety notes from that particular item, but it was very few.
Yeah.
So it's
I knew, see, I just knew it. No, thank you, that would be helpful.
Okay, next up is what, Thomas?
Okay, so you'd like that one first?
I think we have, you have your on-call professional
Oh, yeah,
services
there we go.
at 8A.
8A.
Okay. So this one, as you probably know, we've done a few different rounds of these over the last decade or so. What these allow us to do is have engineering and surveying firms on call to allow us to proceed with some smaller projects, but more importantly, to have a process in place for if a grant-funded project comes down the pipe and they require either for the planning or the construction of a project to have a selective process by which you've decided who's going to be the design engineer, who's going to be the construction engineer for a certain project, that you have these already lined up. We've in the past used the QBS, which is the qualifications-based selection process. It's basically a way to compare different firms against each other by ranking them in various categories, rather than put out a building project and have everybody bid on that with a lump sum pricing. So the goal is to try to get away from a cost base and more of a professional qualifications-based process. So in the past, we've had either 3 or 5, depending on how many surveying firms expressed interest. At one point, we had 3 engineering firms and 2 survey. We're coming out of this last
selection process we used in 2019. We didn't have any surveying firms identified. We didn't have a lot of survey upcoming, and we hadn't really utilized the surveying firms in the previous selection. So we had three. We have three currently. Hoyle Tanner, VHB, and Quantum, now Turner Consultants. Those are the three we have. So we put out the RFQ. We received 9 packages from different firms. We picked 5 of those for interviews. We held those last month and then ranked them. As a result of that, we had 3 that were for engineering, that were pretty head and shoulders above. And then we've been working with Sanford Surveying a little bit for a few smaller projects lately, and they've done a good job. They have a lot of local knowledge, being right here in New Boston, and seem to be very adept at the historical research piece of the surveying. It's not just going out with a transit out in the field, it's knowing how to research deeds and kind of how roads came to be. So at this time, we'd like to recommend extending on-call agreements with Hoyle Tanner Associates, Van Ashangen and Breslin, and Fuss and O'Neill of Manchester and Bedford, and Sanford Surveying. As part of the QBS process, at this point, they would propose their hourly rates for their different levels of professional. And then as we get a project, we would reach out to the firm or firms that we feel would be best suited for that particular project, and then give us a task order for that. Let's say it's a traffic study. One of the things that came into play this year that didn't come into previous was there's an opportunity for a Clean Water Revolving Fund grant for asset management. There's going to be some grant window opening in the fall, but we would like to apply for that when it does open. And a couple of these firms have a little bit more asset management experience that could be grant funded for the town. So we wanted to lean a little bit more into that this time. We didn't have any with the Center Street Bridge project now at the back burner in a rehab instead of a replacement. We have a little less need for a full-on bridge engineering firm, but we did want to lean into the asset management piece a little bit for that possible grant. So these are our recommendations. So it'll be 3 straight engineering firms and then Sanford Surveying for the surveying piece.
Go ahead.
I got a bunch. Is there any cost for having these people on call?
No.
Okay, and what would be the effective date of working with these companies?
Usually it's just as fast as we can get, the agreements in place. With a couple of these, we already have agreements, so it would be pretty boilerplate from the last round of, they're pretty standard AIA type documents for the overall contract. Right now, we don't have any, make sure I don't forget anything, but I don't believe we have any upcoming engineering projects to let. We're working with HTA already for a culvert project on Juniper Drive. At some point, we will need to line somebody up potentially for some engineering for the Center Street culvert, but we might be able to do all that in-house. We've got a template from the state for their projects, so we might not even need them for that. Then it would just be a matter of when things come up, we reach out to them and get a task order.
How long has the current contract been in effect?
We awarded in 2019. Some of them took about a month, 2 months to get signed up, but
Normally 3 years is a normal.
We had done 16, we had done one in 19. The state allowed us to extend for the Center Street project because we already had an engineer in place for that. But if we were going to accept any new state work or federal grant work at this point, we'd have to have a new process in place. It's about a 3-year, 36-month.
Anybody else got any questions?
No, I know that this is a thing, Adam, but I just want to say it out loud with the budget restraints being so tight this year that, hourly rate being prioritized and making sure that it's still within, I know it, but we just need to say it, that this isn't a free, for the general public, that this isn't just a free rein to use these companies as needed.
Right.
We and can certainly appreciate that. They're, in general, they're fairly close to each other anyway, at least they have been in the past rounds. But we also try to take pride as best we can into using in-house engineering for as much as we can. I just, for the folks at home, now that you say that, the other piece that we use the on-call, the engineering firms for is for planning board applications. They'll do either a peer review, or in some cases, if the planning board's asked for construction inspections throughout the process, the developer will pay for them to do that. So a lot of that is a pass-through where the developers are paying for the cost of the engineering.
College, you had a question?
Well, I just want to make a comment. I'm not sure how you want to handle this, but in the best interest of full transparency, I have had a working professional relationship with Sanford Engine Surveying out of Bedford for a number of years with my LLC. So to avoid any perception of impropriety, and I don't know how the board wants to handle this, I can recuse myself, abstain from the vote, but I don't want to put us in a situation where it might taint the process.
No, I think that's your call. And if you
typically
feel
is.
more comfortable abstaining, then that would be.
Yeah, all right.
I think a recusal would be the appropriate,
Yeah.
not,
Okay.
the abstention is still a vote,
Right.
whereas a recusal is not a vote.
So you want to,
I will recuse myself then.
somebody want to make the motion then?
I'll make the motion, we award a 3-year on-call contract with Hoyle Tanner and Associates, Van Ness, Hagen, Brucelin, and Fuse O'Neill, and Stanford Surveying.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any further discussion or
Can I
questions?
just ask a question?
Go right ahead.
This just binds DPW, right? I know the sewer department uses Hoyle Tanner all the time, but it has nothing to do with this.
They had, the
you
sewer
coordinated in
commissioners
any way?
had asked if they could utilize the on-call. I told them that they should probably check with Derek and Danielle about the, whether or not whatever they're doing via the purchasing policy, you know, if it would count. I would think it probably would, since they're part of the town.
If they were
of
working
Goffstown.
for sewer, it'd be separate billing anyway, wouldn't it?
It is separate, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
I think if the sewer department had a grant project, for instance, and wanted to use our on-call process that we had selected, I think they could probably write a cover letter that would, you know, make it match, but they definitely want to ask before they started.
Again, motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? 4-0, and Collis is a recusal.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay, so Thomas Drive. As you may remember, a few years ago, we had this lot on Thomas Drive, which is a fairly compact neighborhood over off Route 13, Pleasant Street. There's a town-owned parcel there, which is pretty much an outfall for some of the drainage in the neighborhood, so I presume that's why it was never developed. Town took it for taxes years ago. There were some hazard trees that were falling on parcels, so at the time, we'd come to the board and we removed basically almost all the trees that were in that area. A couple of requests here tonight. One of the abutters has noticed that since trees were removed for whatever reason, people now are deciding it's a good place to dump their yard waste, so wheelbarrows come down the street and into the area, which wouldn't be so bad, but it's also because of that small drainage outfall that's there, it's probably not the greatest place to have any impediments to that. We already need to do some improvements to the flow channel because it just turns into open channel flow there to prevent it from getting into an abutting parcel. But this one neighbor in particular would like to see a no dumping sign. If the board wants to do something like that where this is in a residential neighborhood, it might be the kind of thing to think about, a split rail fence or something across the front with a sign on it if you really want to go above and beyond. I don't believe we've got other town-owned parcels that are posted no dumping, but we don't have too many that are in a neighborhood like this that might be, you know, more asking for this kind of thing. So that would be part one. The second part would be in the future. So as soon as the water precinct has their budget built back up again for another capital project of a good size, they need to replace all the water lines in the Hermsdorf, Thomas, Janus neighborhood. And so we're holding off until that time to do the road work. It definitely needs drainage work, and the road itself needs to be rebuilt. It would be probably good practice to utilize this town parcel for some treatment of the stormwater from the neighborhood that already somewhat goes there. If the board saw fit, I think it'd be a good place to look at potential for a stormwater pond, either a retention or detention pond, which will then treat the stormwater of the neighborhood before it eventually outfalls to I don't know if it's Bog Brook or Widow Brook that winds behind the neighborhood there, but it does go right to a stream from this area. So that would be my recommendation, but we didn't want to kind of start looking in that direction as we're putting plans together for the rebuild, if the board had other designs for a parcel there.
There's no dumping in a split rail gonna be enough to stop people from dumping?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I did send a couple pictures to Derek to, if
Yeah,
in the packet,
got it.
folks at home want to look at them. It's pretty scruffy now, certainly things are growing up. There's remnants of the pad that was used for some of the tree removal. We do need to push that off to the side a little bit to stop encroaching on the drainage path, but it is a little rough looking, but I also don't want to necessarily turn it into a park either, where maintenance assumptions and expectations for the neighborhood are pretty high, you know.
Can we just do the sign and see if that solves the problem before we put up fencing?
Certainly could.
So I think there's two questions before you. One is on the, do you want to put up a no dumping signage? And then also, how do you want to handle the retention or detention pond? Because DPW hasn't put any effort into any design as of yet.
So let's handle the first question, dumping signs. Okay.
You want a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that the town place on the property a no dumping sign.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
A single sign only.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And if that one disappears, we'll come up with something else.
Put a horse sign up.
Right.
Barbed wire sign. Snakes, I heard snake signs are good. They
Snakes.
keep people away.
And then the second one, can you go in a little bit more detail on what you're talking
Sure.
about?
I think the big question we would have now is if as we're designing the drainage for the neighborhood and we want to make some improvements and probably get some MS4 points for treatment of stormwater, should we be including that use of that parcel in some way for stormwater management?
Why wouldn't we?
yes.
Only because, as a town-owned parcel, at any moment, the neighbor could ask to buy it. I just didn't want to, if there was any indication that the town wanted to sell it, we won't go in that direction. We'll think of other things.
Is
But,
it necessary to have it?
if it was sold off or added to one of the abutting parcels, we'd have to maintain an easement because there already is an outfall streamlet that goes
Then
through
we'd
it.
I would say we would probably keep it anyway then.
Well, the recommendation is just to let DPW utilize the map for, I'm assuming for planning purposes. It's not to actually create.
No, the map that indicates which
That's
lot
the
it is.
lot.
The lot.
Right, but I'm saying it's for future, like in the design portion, not to actually do
Right,
any
we
work
wouldn't,
in that.
go break ground now or anything.
Yeah.
We're a couple years out from rebuilding the neighborhood, but if we know we can use that to manage stormwater in the future, we'll.
As you're planning, you'd be able to plan it,
Yeah.
use that, that's all I get. Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we allow DPW to implement or start planning for a stormwater retention pond on the site.
Second.
Okay,
Could you,
I
would you,
just want-
would you,
I-
would
I-
you consider just for, that authorize
Go ahead.
DPW to use the lot for future stormwater management?
Sure.
that's what I was gonna suggest, instead of a detention pond or retention pond, I was gonna, because that's cuts it down.
Flexibility, key things
Yeah,
there.
so, So Mark made that motion, seconded by
Second.
Kelly.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
If we wanted to change that for some necessary reason later, this wouldn't stop us from doing that, would it?
No, it can come back, we can come back.
Okay, all right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And then just, if I could steal a couple minutes, give you a little department update, kind of where we sit on a few projects and road plan, et cetera. I guess that's more a question for Mr. Chair. Does that-
Go ahead,
that work?
go ahead.
Okay. I'll try to be fast. My auctioneer voice
Can
comes
we
in.
turn the timer on?
Yes, the heat seat heater. Okay, so I figured I'd give you a quick rundown on where we are with the road plan first. Serenitas and Sunbeam, that neighborhood, pretty long streets, but we had a reclaim and drainage project there this year. Those are complete. We have a couple little driveway areas to touch, but the majority of that project is complete. And they'll be topped next year. Elm and Maple, as you probably have noticed, the water precinct began their work before last, right as soon as school let out. They are still working on a few of their services, and they have a couple links of the main that needs to be replaced on the outbound side past Maple Ave. But we were able to get in, even though they're still in the neighborhood, to work on Maple Ave itself. We have was a double barrel crossing underneath Maple Ave, which goes by the school, then the outlet. We were able to change that out. There were some pretty good blockages, and old pipe had been stuffed with a couple of smaller sleeves, so it was really backing up flow quite a bit. So we were able to swap those, and it should be back in this week to continue with our piece of that project, so the drainage, the sidewalk, a little bit of realignment there, and then the roadway work itself. Let's see, Mass Road and Pinard Street, gas, so we had to come in, do some exploratory work earlier in the season. Then because of what we found, the gas company needed to come in and adjust some lines because we had some pipes that were flowing backwards, and one that was not on our map. So the gas company had to come in on their schedule, do their piece. Now that they're done, we can get in, but we were trying to crash our Serenitas and Sunbeam project and get that completely done. So then when school let out, we could start on Maple Ave and then get to Mass Road before the end of the summer as well. So the plan right now was to get back going this week. I think with vacations are starting to thin out after the holiday, we should be able to get into that and get that project started. The goal, of course, is to get it done before Bartlett School starts up as well. Albert Street, the Sewer Commission's got their project there, as you might recall. I know Mark knows exactly where Albert Street is. It's right in the Rochambeau neighborhood. It's a dead-end street that Sewer Commission had a fairly large trench, larger than they expected, so the cost to patch what they had disturbed was actually going to be more expensive than just getting in a full-width machine to pave the whole street. They had asked if we'd be willing to contribute to that. We negotiated down to DPW is going to pay for the reclaim, since normally a contractor wouldn't reclaim the street before they patch, and we're going to pay for some of the stone to go in the piece that they didn't disturb, as well as a couple of the driveways that weren't disturbed for the sewer project that will be now that the whole street's going to be paved, but the Sewer Commission's going to pay for all the paving, base paving and top, and then everything they've disturbed. They're going to take care of all the landscaping, so pretty good deal, I think, all around, and for the neighborhood especially, they'll get the whole street done rather than a 2/3 width winding patch that goes down the road.
So that was a street light at the end of that.
I think so, but I
Stop
don't.
sign at each
Let's
other.
ask Andy, see if he wants one.
Yeah. The one downside of us not being able, so this was pulled off when the default budget was kind of put out from, we had asked originally for their contractor to give us a change order price to install drainage while they're opening up the road, and to talk about a turnaround at the end, and because of the cost of that, it would have been 60 or 70,000 just for the drainage. That's been pulled off, but the soil's very well draining there. There's plenty of grass still in the neighborhood to percolate, so there's not a huge need for drainage there. So we think we'll be able to avoid going back to Albert Street for 20 plus years if the sewer patch holds up. Let's see, overlays, Montalona, there's a short stretch of Montalona that we had opened up for an overlay. Greer Road's been done, Amoskeag, Cates, and Keith, and Ledgewood, which were all paved, reclaimed last year, were overlaid this year. Holly Street, Continental Paving finished that up, as well as the portions of Eden and Heald that intersect with Holly. We created a turnaround at the end of the Upton-Glenwood neighborhood. It used to be just a dead end. As part of our project there, we had added we permitted and added a small hammerhead turnaround at the end, which will benefit both us plowing as well as all deliveries. We're using people's driveways and stuff. It was pretty rough. So that Upton turnaround was finished and topped. Back Mountain Road, we had that culvert project as you get close to Roby Road, right at the very end of Back Mountain last year. So that needed to be topped, the approach and then the culvert area itself and then the exit. We've done some mill and fill and patching all over town, of course. All the new pavement, once it's done, we have to add shoulder gravel along, so you probably notice some shoulder gravel here and there along any of the new pavement. Well, we have that machine and that crew, which is kind of a chain of work to get the shoulder gravel prepped, placed, compacted. We do a few of the areas that have either erosion, washouts, or kind of the shoulders just gone down over time. So we've done a bunch of that. Line striping, the detail work is done around town. The long lines were delayed due to weather. They are scheduled to be back in starting at 8 o'clock tonight to start the long lines on the main roads, so yellow line and the white edge lines on the higher traffic roads. They've got a couple nights this week and then back again next week to finish up that. We may have a couple of the streets on the road plan that won't be ready yet for painting. They'll have to come back for a night or two later in the season to get those. Speaking of contractors, we had the knotweed contractor in. They've done their spring treatment. You probably see the knotweed is starting to turn orange. In some cases, some of the outcroppings are only half dying, so usually they'll hit those with the second treatment of the year in the fall. But we're using this opportunity now with the interns to patrol to see area A, what areas were treated but not completely treated, and B, what new areas have cropped up since we provided the map to them in the fall last year. So we'll try to get all new areas of this invasive marked out for the next treatments, or if they have to, the next permit year. Roadside mowing should be starting up here in July and August. We've had our own, the sidewalk machine has a boom mower, so we've had that out in a few of the neighborhoods so far. It's doing pretty well. It doesn't have as long a boom and it can't, get where a real full-size tractor can get in a lot of cases, but we can take the worst of it off some of the sightline areas. So we've had that out. But part of the roadside mowing contract also includes stormwater maintenance ponds, like that one we might be thinking about on Thomas. We have plenty of those, and then also that same contractor mows our landfill because of the steep slopes. So we have to keep that down to prevent woody growth from getting into the liner of the cap.
Isn't there a big one up at Catamount someplace too, up that way?
We've got, yes.
Well, there was an issue with it a few years ago.
We've got Monarch,
Yeah.
Magnolia. I always confuse
Up in
the
that
two.
area.
I think it's Magnolia. Yes, we have dozens of them around town. There's a few in the Spice Rack. There's a few in the neighborhoods up above Maple Ave that are pretty front and center. So we try to get to as many of those as we can and keep them just in a mowing perspective rather than having to come in 10 years after the fact and cut a bunch of trees and reestablish all that. It's much cheaper for the town in the long run to keep them mowed. Let's see, and then finally, I know Selectman Georgianis had asked me last week about this one. Air burner, a couple things with the air burner. I had to request an extension. We have when you first get a permitted air source, they give you a what's called a temporary permit. You can operate under that temporary permit for a year, and then you have to refile for a permanent installation. I think that's a chance for new installs to decide if the conditions by which they applied for the permit in the first place are still warranted or met, or if you need to increase your emissions or decrease them. A few months ago, I had asked the state to extend. They have a one-time extension of a temporary permit, you can extend it for another year. Because one of the things that you have to do before your permanent permit is in place is an emissions test, where the state comes, we both agree on a testing protocol, they come, we are supposed to crank the machine up to its full capacity for a couple hours, and we, every 15 seconds, take readings of the emissions. And if you pass, then you can continue on. If you don't pass, then your permit might be modified. We have not, to this point, been able to get to the full capacity that our permit's written for, so we were having some questions about whether or not we could even support an emissions test. We really would need a pretty good volume of brush, and I wasn't comfortable a couple months ago saying we're coming to the end of this period. Even if we had a big pile of brush here, I'm not sure we have used it enough to keep it cranking for several hours and meet all the requirements. So they've extended our permit, but it's clear to me, I think, that when we applied for the permit, we asked for too much emissions. We had basically applied for the maximum theoretical capacity of this air burner. And what the state did with that information was they said, okay, if you operated at the maximum capacity for 300 and something days a year, you would be emitting X pounds of NOx or X pounds of sulfur. They dialed us back to a level that was below a certain threshold that the feds have, they treat you differently depending on which side of this threshold you're on. But even that is well beyond the amount of brush that we receive. So even in our heaviest times, we maybe could be at capacity for a day, half a day, but then we go a couple of weeks where we don't need to burn. So I think what's going to happen here is we'll get our testing protocol lined up with the state, but then when we apply for our full permit, there's going to be some changes. We're going to ask for lower thresholds because it makes it easier for us to maintain the permit going forward. The state's less concerned that you have this open-ended air source that you're just going to be emitting. So that's what we're going to dial in now, but sometime in the next 60 to 90 days we have to have this emissions test. So I'll keep you posted on that. We are. We haven't burned in a couple weeks now. Pile's starting to get to the point where we're going to. We're some growing pains. We have. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have eschewed getting it connected to the three-phase power and waited to extend three-phase deeper into the site because we're pretty close to our property line. So we've tried to be mindful with the winds, prevailing winds when we burn. But if you've been on site during a windy day, it kind of can swirl and winds can change, and you just hate to be in the middle of a big burn and all of a sudden the wind changes and now Ernie at the entrance or the folks, the cousins right around the corner are getting some of this. It's much better than an open burn, but when you first put a load in, there is some ash. So anyway, we're trying to be mindful, be good neighbors. So I think that's part of the growing pains of it all as well.
Is there anybody coming in and chipping that stuff, or are we just burning it now?
Primarily burning. We do now have a source that if we can find the ability to truck it, they will accept it. But that's kind of our main, that's our limiting factor. Far enough that I wouldn't want to build it into our regular schedule. I think it's about a 45-minute ride. But one of the things that we don't have a lot of is time and ability, extra trucks to be adding brush into the into the mix. So it's definitely better to burn, but kind of all those competing things. We're trying to be good neighbors with it, but still get enough experience with this thing that we don't look like fools when we have the state to come in and do our test either.
Anything else?
So that's where that is. I think that's it, unless anybody's got any other.
Adam, what are we doing with corrugated now? Is there a market for that anymore? Or are we...
Corrugated, we are including in our single stream. I don't know this month's rate. For a while, it was we could make a couple $100 on a bale if we were baling and then having it trucked to the vendor, but kind of that same idea. It wasn't worth the extra couple bucks that we could make there to get it all to one stop shop. Take advantage of the single stream nature of it. If it really went through the roof, and if right now recycling this month is for the single stream is $35 a ton. During budget season last year, we were paying 80 something, and I kind of projected 60 to 70 for this year. So we're
in a great place right now. If that takes another swing for some reason and gets back up where it's more expensive than trash, we might talk about pulling it out again and, trying to save, but.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Adam.
Derek, I think you're up, aren't you?
Yes, tab 9A, you'll find your committee meeting assignments. Wednesday at 6 PM, the sewer commission
Got it.
meeting in this room. Next week, on Wednesday at 6:30 PM, the library board of trustees will meet. That's you, Chairman Georganis.
Yep, I'll be there.
At 7 PM, Parks and Recs Commission will meet.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, great. And Thursday, 6 PM, capital improvement program.
Hang in, yep.
On your next page, you have your consent agenda. We provided an update because we had one addition. Employee status reports. There are 2 patrolman 3, 2 master patrolman. These are promotions. 2 police dispatcher 2 to dispatcher 3, promotions. You have a new hire of a Parks and Rec seasonal lifeguard, 1. You have new hires of 2 DPW seasonal laborers. You have a new hire for a GTV education tech, new hire for a per diem EMT, you have a resignation of a full-time firefighter, a promotion of a firefighter to master firefighter, and then we have an employee status report for a weekly stipend for the appointed deputy tax collector. You have an event permit for a Granite State Health and Fitness Foundation bicycle safety and maintenance and ride on the rail trail on Sunday, October 6th from 8 to 1. You have rights to inter on Shirley Hill Cemetery, Section 2, lots 58A and 59A. And the item added after the packet was done was a Lynchfield Danis Park water betterment assessment. This is a payout in the amount of $3,040.80.
That's on that situation where that's the one where it was proposed for a certain amount of units and then they cut down.
No, this is what happens a lot of times is when a property is sold down there, rather than carrying the betterment and paying twice a year as part of the closing, they're paying off their balance of the betterment. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. Any more questions? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Your next page, you have a land use change tax and land use change tax warrant from the assessor. He recommends approval on map 5, lot 54.
Motion to approve the assessor's recommendation is presented this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
At your next page, you have a recommendation from the Conservation Commission. They recommend the appointment of Jocelyn Cohn as an alternate member of the Conservation.
Jacqueline. I'll make a motion to appoint Jacqueline Cohn as an alternate member of the Goffstown Conservation Commission with a term expiring March 31st, 2027.
Second.
Motion by Collis, seconded by Jim. Collis, do you have any information on this person?
No, it came before the Conservation Commission. Looks like a great addition, so I think we're happy to have her on board.
Okay. Again, motion by Collis, seconded by Jim. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion passes.
At tab 9E, you have, this evening, you have the volunteer applications for those community members that were interested in serving on the Goffstown River Advisory Committee. I did provide the board with an updated spreadsheet because we did have one application come in by email on Saturday. So I've added that to the spreadsheet that's in your packet and also provided you a copy of that individual's volunteer application. Again, the charter is in your packet, but it is, you're looking to appoint 3 members from the community at large, with at least 1 community at large member being a Piscataquag River waterfront resident, and then 2 alternate members from the community at large.
I'd like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting, Peter, so we have a bit more time to look more completely and thoroughly at the applications, and I just saw them today for the first time, so.
I don't have a problem. My one thing, when will we have an answer on Andy?
I did talk to Andy, and I corresponded by email, and he said he would serve as the PERLAC representative on the committee.
So we should take him off of this list then?
For considerations of the community at large,
Right.
yes.
Andy
Yes.
Carteret?
Yeah, Andy Carteret will serve as the
Okay.
ex officio member from PERLAC.
Good. That reduces the number.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds good.
I'll put this on the agenda for the 22nd.
Thank you.
Next, Danielle.
That's for tab 9F. We have a recommendation relative to the renewal of the lease for the turf tank line striping robot. As you recall, this is a partnership between the school and Parks and Rec, whereas the school pays for it, but
We operate it.
we operate it and we hold the lease on that item.
Come on.
Make a motion to approve the requested renewal agreement and authorization, or authorize the chair or vice chair to sign the new agreement effective for the period of September 2nd, 2024 through September 2nd, 2027.
Second. Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jim, Parks and Rec representative.
I've seen it in action.
Yeah. Any discussion?
I
Go ahead.
Just to add to that, I had this in here, and then I went back and forth with the vendor a little bit. They've changed their contract language a little bit, so I'm going to be presenting the contract as they propose to our legal counsel for their review first. They've added some amendments to the appendix in which we ask for the non-appropriation clause, and they've added a right of first refusal if we attempt to switch to any other company. And I just want to make sure that that language is reviewed before we finalize it. So
So
this
you
would
wanna
be
table this?
subject to
No, I think that-
approval by council.
Yeah, I think.
Pending any issues.
Yeah, I think if council comes up with any issues, what we typically do is we ask the vendors to change the contract to satisfy our legal
Okay.
counsel, and then if they would refuse, we would bring it back to you at that
Okay,
point.
so we shouldn't sign it then?
I don't have a version to sign.
Okay,
Not until it comes back.
all right.
So we're gonna amend the motion to reflect,
I can add pending any
Pen- yeah.
issues, but the, yeah.
Right,
okay, I'll second the amended motion.
okay.
Yeah.
So Charlie made the motion, Jim seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
And then new this evening, and sent to you by email, you do have a memo in front of you, and I'll let Danielle speak to it, regarding propane and oil commodity rates as well as some of the other commodities.
So while we are in the summer months, we try to take a look at the commodity rates because we find that those are kind of the lower of the seasons. The school just went out and did their extension for propane and oil, so the vendor is actually the same one that we use as well. So they reached out to us and said, if you want to know, here's what the current rates are. So the propane and oil rates, as you can see highlighted in the memo, are actually slightly lower than what we have under our current contract. I think it would be advisable to go ahead and lock in the quantities at those rates for a 12-month period. And that'll take us through September of '25 for the oil and through the end of August if '26 actually, because they can do propane further out due to the volumes. And the electricity at this point, the vendor is recommending that we hold, even though the current rates are slightly below what we're paying now. They think they're going to continue to go down and that we should hold off on locking in at this time. So they're there for your review, as well as the recommendation. And for gas and diesel, I don't currently have rates from the vendor. It is the state vendor that we're using right now. And they're going to be getting back to me with more information, which I can bring back at a later date. But if the board is agreeable, then perhaps an authorization for me to renegotiate with that state vendor or our current vendor to make sure that we're getting the best rate possible, just because the rates change so quickly on all those commodities. The oil and propane rates that you see there are only locked in until tomorrow, so that I could bring it to the board this evening.
So you have two motions here then, right?
Yes,
Yes.
two separate ones.
Yep.
Jim?
I'm just thinking, it's nice that they're lower, but have we checked with any other sellers that we might even be lower than what they're offering now?
Yep, we have checked around. I haven't gone out and done a full RFP process. If the board wanted to explore that, we certainly could. But what we found is that the rates change so quickly that when I've called around to the other vendors, they've confirmed that the rates are within a portion of a penny of each other at this point. And they say it's pretty much just tied to the rack rate of the market.
Okay, thanks.
What was that supposed to mean?
No, I guess to me, I'm just thinking, it probably doesn't make any sense to go chasing around to other vendors because, like you said,
Yeah.
close. But I wanted to ask the question, so she answered it.
Can we get a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to authorize the Assistant Town Administrator to sign a 12-month contract with Dead River for propane and oil as presented.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jim. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Now the second part. So what you're asking here is you want to go out, find the best price, and then you'll make the decision?
As long as it's not exceedingly different than what our current rate is. Right now, we're seeing rates that are right around where we were, either slightly above or slightly below, depending on the vendor. So I was hoping to either stick with the same vendor or, in this case, the state vendor, which we wouldn't typically require the RFP process if we use a state bid.
Right.
But if I find that a rate elsewhere is exceedingly better and it's a different vendor than we've ever used before, I would see about bringing that back to the board. I just don't know how long the rates would last, so I'd have to talk to them if I come across that.
And we've ran into that issue before. We're cutting it so close.
Do I need a motion one way or the other, or any more questions?
Yeah, for a period of at least 12 months, we giving you authorization for a 3-year tie-in, or how's that gonna work?
For commodities, we can't usually get anything past 12 months, but as you can see, like with the electrical supply, they do a 12, 24, or 36, and you can see the rates are minimally different. So we've not really opted to go beyond that, but if you wanted to say just 12 months, that's perfectly fine. It's just a suggestion.
I'm not sure what's prudent in that sense.
We've had longer-term contracts before for utilities, and it worked in our favor historically, but I don't know, Danielle, if you're seeing rates that are lower, maybe it is in our best interest to just do a 12-month, like, have you seen a lot that have been less? We haven't seen
I
downshift.
think the only one we've really looked at is the electricity, is for those
longer
periods.
terms, yeah.
I think if you'll recall, a year ago in the spring, we had floated the idea of having actually a consultant come in and help with all commodities. And I think once we can get fully staffed here at Town Hall, I think that's probably somebody that works in those markets on a daily basis to advise the town what the best way is. It's very difficult for Danielle or anybody else who's really dealing with this when the contract's coming up to.
And you don't have the ticker tape running?
Yeah, once a year.
So maybe it'd be most prudent just do 12 months at this point, and then
Yeah, so
hopefully we could, again, explore that, having a consultant come in and advise the town on all the commodities.
Okay.
Okay. Motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the finance director to negotiate rates for the remaining commodities and sign the necessary paperwork to ensure the rates are secure for a period of at least 12 months, or at a maximum 12 months, with
Second.
either the current, the rest of the motions there, current supplier or current state contractor.
Motion by Kelly, it was seconded by Mark. Only thing I'd like to add is, once you've done that, just
Bring it
inform
up.
us of what you did.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, if you were able to get something for 18 months or 2 years at a good deal,
We'll try and get them to hold it. so
I'll
we
try and get them
can-
to
Can you-
hold it,
can you
yeah.
We'll try and get them to hold it to bring it back to you.
okay.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I don't know that we've seen downshifting in cost.
Yeah, I don't either, I don't know.
I can't
but,
think of
you know,
any
just-
time that,
okay.
as far as I've been here, but.
Okay.
As far as holding it, I mean, you can even send us email or something, get back to me.
Ultimately, we would have to have you meet
Take
to
a meeting to vote.
actually vote though.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you.
Go get us good rates, Danielle.
I'll do my best.
Okay, we'll go to the action matrix. Not much there.
I'd like to add one item to the matrix, Peter, if I could, please. I'd like to get some regular updates on the unauthorized construction that's going on Kennedy Hill Road, so that it's before us on a regular basis and get regular updates on what the status is.
You've been up there.
I have been up there and I
I've
would,
been up there.
can you be a little bit more specific? Because there is an active building permit, there is an active timber harvest that are both permitted on Kennedy Hill Road.
Well, that could be part of the update, you know, what's the current status of those issues? But there's clearly ongoing construction going on up there. And this is on town-owned property. We never approved anything that it be constructed to town standards or anything. What are,
Are you speaking of the lots adjacent to Kennedy Hill Road, or are you speaking of the Class 6 portion of
the
Kennedy
Class
Hill?
6 portion of Kennedy?
And I have been in contact with that property owner and talked to him about what was approved by the board to access his lot.
Yeah.
And there is also, before I was town administrator, an adjacent lot was given permission to maintain a portion of Kennedy Hill Road. But I can definitely add that to the action matrix and provide an update to the board.
I just want to make sure we're updated regularly, Derek, that's all. Because I get calls from people, what the heck is going on? You can see it,
Mark's traveled it, haven't you?
I travel the road.
I have too.
from End to end,
but I mean, you can see it from the irrigation station. I mean, it's
Right.
front and center to everybody.
and I think what he said he was gonna build and what's being built is two different.
Oh,
All right, well, let's not,
Yeah.
probably shouldn't cover that right now.
No, not at all.
So we want to add that to the action matrix,
Okay.
I got it.
No, go ahead. It's a new business.
Huh?
It's a new business.
No, I'm good, there's nothing on this.
Okay. It's something I wanted to bring up, so, with the trash changes, the trash pickup, for 4th of July. So they were still picking up as regularly scheduled, but I got a bunch of people over out of town, and heard that there was complaints about people not realizing that trash pickup was on schedule. It is that, for whatever reason, but noting that people aren't on social media for anything like that, considering the holiday list that DPW has, is it possible for us to push something out on Nixle or perhaps on the town website so that we can just try to reach as many people as possible, like
I
even
think
with
there are
the holidays?
limitations on what types of announcements you can do on Nixle.
But the website-
Traditionally, we have done those as public safety and major traffic events, but
Yeah.
we had them on Facebook. Both Town Hall and DPW did have this
Yeah.
most recent one. We can definitely, and I think we actually had a banner that if you clicked on, if you went to the Goffstown webpage, any of the web pages, you got a pop-up from starting July 1st through the 4th that said the town offices were closed on the 4th, and trash pickup
Yeah, I saw that.
would
Be on schedule.
would be on schedule. We can put something in the,
So I know, and I don't want to convolute it. I was thinking of that now that you can subscribe to like the calendars, if it's possible to put some. I'm just trying to think of people who aren't on social media, and if you didn't go to the website, like, you know, there's some responsibility in that, obviously. But I was trying to think of other ways that.
and maybe we can do get the word out. DPW does a great thing there every year. They have a magnet that
I'll have one on
actually,
my fridge.
and that's how I, as a resident,
Me
do
too.
that every year, is I have the magnet, so I can
Same.
look at that at any point, but I can at least let Adam know that
Yeah.
you received those comments.
Yeah, I got some too, but, you know, my feeling is, before you had social media and Nixle and all that, how did the message get out? It was the sign at the transfer station, or maybe we could use the signs and, you know, the street signs there and put them out, but, I mean, it's been like that for years. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, so.
It has, but if there's an easy way that we could, you know, think about this stuff to get it to more people.
Okay.
Or maybe the magnet version of the holiday schedule, could they like get one of those printed to put on the,
And how do you get these to the people?
I don't know,
I mean,
I'm just trying
I
to
understand.
brainstorm for stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can,
So anyways, I don't
Okay.
need an answer, I was just throwing that out
Okay.
there.
Yeah, I'll let Adam know.
Did,
The department head meeting this week, so we can.
kind of under new business, did the library reach out to you, Danielle?
Recently?
Yeah. Well, they're still having many questions on the personnel.
Oh, okay.
So I suggested, you might not like this, but I suggested that you go over to one of those meetings and sit with them and explain that.
I've offered to do that.
What,
Yeah.
what in regards to personnel?
They're rewriting their personnel manual.
Oh, okay.
They had a lot of FMLA questions, and I says, whoa,
Yeah.
that's not me.
They had given me a few sections specifically that they had asked for comment on, which I had done and sent back to them via email. And at that time, I had offered to Diane Hebert as well as Diane Hathaway that if they'd like me to attend a meeting, just let me know which date and time that committee's meeting, and I'd be happy to be available for the discussion.
I got one of the questions was, I think you said that the review committee was the library, and you suggested that they use this, maybe the select board or somebody else. If they were to release somebody, and they made, then the review board for that person who got released would be the people who released them.
Yeah, they had something on a disciplinary process
Right.
that involved appealing to the same group that made the decision initially. So I had suggested maybe considering an alternate committee or some sort of, committee that could be called at that time together. Maybe it's a representative of their board and someone from another board or community member, something like that.
That was.
Just a
and that,
suggestion,
you know,
yeah.
That was half an hour, 40 minutes of discussion just now. But, and then Derek, there was a member there, Jordan, who does shorthand, who does minutes.
Okay.
And I says, if you know, she said she was interested, and I said, well, go in and talk to Derek and, see if we could use it. I know we're still working on it.
Yeah, we're trying to actually explore a technological solution to that.
Right.
We're trying to save some money, but yes, absolutely. I will reach out to Diane about that.
Yeah.
Has sewer commission talked to you about that too? Somebody to take minutes?
No.
They're,
I'll talk to Lynn and
yeah, would you
see.
please? It's-
Who's Jordan's last
I
name?
think that may require a change of job
I'll
description in
send it
that
to
case, so
Huh?
we'll have to.
Conservation Commission had the same concern, Derek. I said, I think the town's looking at it kind of a global
Yes.
approach to how we deal with minute taking.
Ultimately, I've talked with a lot of people in the private sector.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are using AI. It's a little bit different when you're doing online meetings because you have different inputs. You can identify which laptop it came through, but I know the school has been trying out a multi-directional mic and trying to see if they can do AI, and if it takes a little bit of hardware, but it's something that we could do, then.
But in the meantime, if we could, you know, get somebody to come in and do, I mean, it's like you said, they're looking for people.
Can we
And
get-
I think it's becoming more work to our staff, as you see, taking minutes, so, I mean,
Oh, I'm taking notes, I'm actually writing
Well,
Adam
who's gonna do
a
the
quick
minute?
note about we're gonna get them done, we'll get them done within the
I'm
statutory
just
time
saying,
period.
that's,
Yep,
you know, that's,
yep.
Can't we send a blast out there to say that we're looking for minute takers? I've had anecdotally, a lot of people say, well, I know so-and-so would love a part-time job taken. Well, who are they? Step forward. How do
If,
we-
if that's a solution, my hope was again to really do the technological. We can
Oh.
put a feeler out for some temporary, and maybe do in parallel. And then, but with the understanding that if we can get a technological solution in place that
That would be great.
costs.
and a legal opinion, if that stands up legally too.
Well, someone would
Well,
still
I-
have to
We still have
review.
to
Really,
review them, yeah.
quite honestly, all you need to take is summary minutes with motions, votes, and
Attendance.
attendance.
Yeah.
There is no requirement for the level of minute taking that we have
Yeah.
taken in this town, and as we're coming out of the default budget, I think we need to look at every potential expense line.
I just know that she did the minutes at the library meeting, she was, I mean, it's going like crazy.
And they're called minutes, not hours for a
Yeah.
reason.
All right, anything else?
No.
Motion, Mark?
Motion to go to non-public session, RSA 91A.
Wait a minute, before we do that, is anybody here for public comment? I want everybody to get up at once. Okay, no.
Public session, RSA 91A:32A, compensation, and B, hiring. Anything else? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly, roll call,
Yes.
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 That concludes tonight's public portion of the meeting, we'll be going into non-public.